We are back for another exciting episode of the hashtag Wednesday Match Play. We had a few technical difficulties. We started at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. It was just a couple of sound issues, and then when I could hear him, he would be dropped out, and then, but hey, we have survived. We're here, and I am pumped for tonight because we're going to talk golf. Like, we have normally we have like a product or a company to promote, and tonight we have a blog that we're promoting, and what we're doing is talking about Golf Unfiltered, but we're going to talk about golf, and we're going to talk about the things that he writes about. And the guy that's with us tonight, he's written for a slew of other publications and online publications, print publications, from what I can tell in the research, maybe just the online side. But we're going to do our best to learn as much as we can about him. But we have Adam from Golf Unfiltered with us, and it's almost weird for me because I was on an episode of his podcast, which will be a topic of conversation tonight. But we'll get to that. I have a ton of questions. We only have 30 minutes. But Adam, welcome to the Wednesday Match Play.
Thanks, Ricky. I'm glad to be a part of it, and I'm also glad that you were a guest on the podcast, and now we actually get to see each other for once, like you were saying.
It was almost weird. I was like, wait a minute, I hope I look okay because my good hair day. Like I hadn't actually met you physically. I had seen you on Twitter, and I still haven't met you physically. But that goes from Twitter, and then now it goes to the podcast. And now we're on the video cast. The next we're gonna have to play 18 holes. Like that's all there is to it. We're gonna have to tee it up. So.
I agree. I think that's from what I remember, you were pretty close to where I'm sitting right now when you were doing your craft beer tour not too long ago. You were in, I think, St. Charles, Illinois, and I should have taken the opportunity.
I'm still a little mad at the fact that you didn't. But it's been almost a year ago, if you can believe it. So, a little side story to the viewers at home. I am a craft beer fanatic, and we were just talking about craft beer because Adam is drinking a local craft beer from Two Brothers Brewing Company, which, ironically enough, is a local craft beer to Scottsdale too, because they have a brewing location here. But I digress. We did a tour of Chicago. They had a set of badges to drink old style. It's not even craft beer, it's craft beer, to be completely honest. You have to go to 19 different neighborhoods of Chicago to drink old style. Well, sure enough, we were like, let's do it. Flew out on a Friday after work, spent the entire weekend and drank crappy beer at 19 different bars in 19 different neighborhoods. Wow. And Adam never came to hang out. So I'm
just a disappointment.
But hey, let's not talk about beer. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about Golf Unfiltered. Let's start from the beginning. Where did the idea come from? What is Golf Unfiltered, and what made you think about it, start it, where the name come from? Give us the 40-second history of the website.
Sure. Well, Golf Unfiltered really started off in college. I've been out of college for quite a few years now. It's kind of sad to think about, actually. And it actually started off at chicagoduffer.com for folks who followed me on that website. Over the time, I worked for a few publications and a few websites that you mentioned, ultimately the Back Nine Network, which is in a different format right now for those of you who follow that site. But ultimately, I still wanted to write about golf, even though I wasn't affiliated with a major brand or a major network. And one of the things that really I kind of grab onto with writing is the behind the scenes stuff. I wanted to kind of talk the way that I talk, or write the way that I talk, I should say, and not worry too much about being all sanctimonious and whatnot that you typically see in golf writing. And so hence the name Golf Unfiltered, because for people who watch, your show as well as listen to my podcast, they'll know that I don't hold anything back. I say words that you probably don't see or hear on the Golf Channel or whatnot. And we try to share some behind the scenes stories with other golf writers as far as just all the things that go on to be a writer, all the trials and tribulations that you experience. And so we've been going on for about 2 years now under that name. And it's been great. We've had a lot of great guests, such as yourself, on the podcast. We continue to do so weekly. I'm probably going to record one later today after we're done here. But it's been fun, and we try to accommodate as many listeners as well as readers as we can.
Dude, that's awesome. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was episode 200. Was that?
You're up there. We're not quite at 200 yet, but you're certainly one of the higher numbers.
Man,
it's been crazy.
So on your website, it talks about hashtag hack to hero. What is that? Because it's a hashtag, and as a digital guy, I go straight to the hashtag. So what is
I
hack
know
to
about
hero?
you and your hashtag. So Hack to Hero is actually an idea started by a buddy of mine that I met over at the Back Nine Network. His name's Matt Castingway, and what his journey is at this point is to try and qualify for the 2017 U.S. Open at Erin Hills. Now, for people who visit the site or have listened to Matt Castingway, he's a frequent guest on the podcast. He's a great golf mind. He's extremely funny, by the way, and he's got a mouth like a truck driver. But he is trying to basically get himself in shape in every way that you can in order to qualify for the Open, not only physically but also mentally. He's working with a number of coaches on his game. He's actually going to a therapist for the mental side as well to kind of get his mind right, and I think for other things as well. Matt, if you're watching this, you know I love you. But and basically it's just him documenting his experience to see if an average Joe, much like Tin Cup, can qualify for the U.S. Open. Now, one of the things that I asked him was, is this something that's actually realistic for you to do? Apparently, he's a pretty good player. Right now, he carries about a 3.4 handicap, and you need to get down to about a 1.6 before you can even try to qualify for the Open. But he's trying it. And I know that he just had some few things go on in his personal life, such as marriage. I mean, who does that? But he needs to, yeah, he'll get through that, and he'll get right back on the golf playing wagon again, or train, or whatever you want to call it. And hopefully we'll get some more updates in that regard.
That's really cool. Well, I hope that he can get to the point that he can. And what a cool story would that be to be able to follow that from your shoes, start to finish. I mean, good luck to him. And who gets married?
Who does that?
So it's a pretty hot topic this week. Like I said, we're talking golf. Adam Scott is not playing in the Olympics. What are your thoughts on that? React to that a little bit. And do you think he will be the only player to do that? Because I could almost see a handful of others maybe bailing from the Olympics based on just comments that I've heard, even just since Adam has bailed. So react to that as you would as a golf blogger.
You know, he's been saying this for a while that he wouldn't play in the Olympics. And so on one hand, it's not surprising that Adam Scott's not going to play for Team Australia. On the other side, though, I mean, this is the Olympics. And it's the first time golf has been in the Olympics in ages. And so why wouldn't you want to be a part of it? Now, anything that I've heard from other pros, it's one of the main dissensions that they feel is the format. You know, they don't like the format of the matches that they're going to play, or at least how the Olympics is drawn out in terms of golf. Still, though, I mean, this is an extremely important time in sports history. You want to be a part of that. Now, from my understanding, Adam, I'm calling him Adam because, we all have fraternity meetings of the group of Adams. But, Adam Scott, I believe, is skipping out on the Olympics for other reasons than just not liking the format. And I'll certainly let him speak to that more so than what I could speak to. But even still, I mean, it's extremely... I'll say the word self-centered in a way, because I feel that you want to represent your country. I've certainly never been in a situation where I even have that option, but surprising, not so much, because he's been saying it all along. Now, to your point about other golfers possibly, following suit and skipping the Olympics for other reasons, I could see that. I can't see an American doing it, but I could certainly see other countries, and I'm sure that a lot of it's going to be politically driven. But we'll just, time will tell. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer in that regard, but really time will tell as far as who goes in, who doesn't.
As a golf fan, and somebody the other day said that, because I only follow Tiger really, and I pay enough attention to know what's going on, and I can speak to the fact that, and we're going to talk about it, what happened to the Masters, et cetera. I'm a golfer first, and a Tiger fan second, and a golf fan third. Well, to your point about the format, it almost, to me, and I get it that it's a big deal that it's back in the Olympics, but to me it feels like just another tour event, because it's the year of a Ryder Cup, the President's Cup. I mean, how many more of these team events do we need? And I don't want to say it because it doesn't, but it a little bit feels like it makes the other team events and/or in the future, this team event, feel a little less important, because the Ryder Cup is the Ryder Cup because it's every so many years. The President's Cup almost is, we get the Ryder Cup, and but it's another team event. And it is the Olympics, you're right. But I think guys are starting to get to the point that they're starting to look at it as it's like the biggest tournament they've ever played in, and it's, yeah, it is. And to be able to be at this stage at this age, to be able to play in it, it's a big deal. But at the same time, I'll be curious to see how it goes. I have a buddy that's actually going to go to the Olympics, and he's going to be going to check out basketball and golf. But to your comment about the format, I mean, come on, get creative. Stroke play, come on.
Yeah, no kidding. It's tough too, and it's funny that you mentioned basketball because a lot of this I feel was said when pros started playing basketball. For the longest time it was just amateurs playing, Olympic basketball. But when the Dream Team was created, I mean, everyone knew the Americans were going to dominate, and they did. And then as time went on, and as the NBA diversified in the number of players and the types of players that it carried, other countries started coming up and giving the Americans a run for their money. Spain, Greece, and others. The difference, though, is with golf, we don't have that. There's nothing to say that the American squad is going to dominate this sport. If anything, I would say that they're an underdog. I mean, the Europeans for years have been just dominating. And just look at the Ryder Cup results for the last few years. And to your point about, this also being a Ryder Cup year coupled with the Olympics, Adam Scott, if that's really a reason why he doesn't want to play, aside from all the political reasons that I assume is going through his head, there is an extremely tight schedule around that time. We're going to have 2 majors in about 45 days, I think it is, followed by the Ryder Cup, then the Olympics. I mean, these guys are going to be beat. And I know that there's a lot that's said, about, these guys are young, they make so much money, they're professional athletes, they should put up with it. But let's be honest, they're still human beings, and they're still going to get fatigued. And it's something that you have to deal with. And I wouldn't be surprised if some folks who want to qualify, I highly doubt this will happen. Don't quote me on this, but someone's going to have to at least choose between the Ryder Cup and the Olympics. I guarantee you there's going to be that situation, if not for one person, maybe 2. And so depending on who that is, I think there's going to be a lot of flack that's given, depending on which way that person goes, if they have to choose one or the other. But because there's such a tight schedule, it kind of opens the conversation up for that. And so it's going to be interesting towards the end of the year.
So to your point about fatigue, I mean, I'm not a professional athlete by any means. I played 36 holes this last weekend, and I'm still tired. So, I mean, I only played 2 rounds of golf. Yeah. I can't imagine doing 4 rounds of golf and the hours they're putting in. And, yeah, I can't – I believe a little bit of what he says about it being a busy schedule, and it really is. And it's going to be, especially for the guys that are higher up in the rankings that are playing some of those bigger tournaments, including those majors. And that's not something that you can just, oh yeah, the Olympics is next weekend. Let's head down to Rio and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. Look at Spieth. Everyone's giving him a hard time still for playing as often as he did because he had a great year last year. People want to see him. People across the globe want to see these guys, but yeah, they still get tired.
So you're all over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. You're on it. What's your favorite social network and why? Both as yourself and as Golf Unfiltered?
Twitter by far. I think, well, most of it is because I still haven't figured out the Facebook thing yet. But you and I got to talk about that. Twitter by far, because I think just the community that exists on Twitter, especially when you're live tweeting, just from your couch or from a bar or whatever, watching golf tournaments, there's so many people that are engaged in that, and I know that you like to use hashtags. I'm trying to step up my hashtag game there, Ricky. You've taught people well, but it's such a clique. It's such a niche community that people really enjoy on Twitter. And quite honestly, the people that stop by golfunfiltered.com or listen to the Golf Unfiltered podcast, I mean, they reach out to me. We get the conversations going. I know that you see it also on Twitter, and it's just such a great way to have instantaneous communication that while you can still have that to an extent on Facebook, and it's just not the same, and the community, the golf community on Twitter is continuing to grow. I mean, there's just so many great accounts to follow that I'm sure people who listen to your show will know about. And it just continues to grow day in and day out. And I mean, and even look at yourself with Google Plus, the community that's coming up in the golf community there that you started. That's another huge community that people need to take advantage of. And I'm surprised that more people don't, or those people who learn about these things and say, oh, I didn't know that thing existed. Well, there's so many people that do it, and it's just a great way to share commonalities with people that share the same interests as yourself.
I appreciate you bringing up the golf community, and it's something that I'm proud of. I to the same reason that I do this, I don't do it because I get paid to do it. I do it because I love it and for the love of the game and the growth of the game and whatever I can do to do that. And the community, it's fun to get excited about. I remember the first time I hit 10 members. Jesus Martinez, who is a good friend of mine, who is a golf pro, works at Top Golf here in the Valley. He was member number 8. And I'm never going to forget that because he was excited and he sent me a message and he was like, you're going to be at 10 members before long, buddy. And I was like, I don't know, maybe. We hit 21,000 last week. And I'm thinking, wow, who in the world are these people? But I don't care because they're seeing the content. They're getting the email notifications. I post every morning. I post a golf quote that I'm just looking for. And I'm learning and I'm growing as a golfer as I'm posting these and sharing these. And there's been conversations that I've gotten mad at in the community. And quite frankly, there was one today that I was arguing back and forth with someone about the best golf ball. And somebody said that if the Pro V1 spun as much as I said that it does for me, that everyone would be using it. And that led to us conversing of if the ball that the tour players are playing are the same balls that we're playing. And it's real conversation. And to your point about Twitter, it's the exact same thing. I can have that conversation right now wherever I am, at a bar, in traffic, at a restaurant, on a plane, if I have Wi-Fi, you name it, that I'm able to be connected and immediately connected to people. And you and I connected initially over Twitter, and we've gone from there to the podcast and now to this video cast. And it's the next, literally the next time we're going to see each other is going to be on the first tee because I can't keep doing this. We're going to have a beer in our hands. But speaking of your podcast, talk about it. Where did it start? What gave you the idea to start the podcast, and maybe just highlight some of the guests that you've had over the time that you've had that?
Sure. Well, I was really trying to diversify the type of medium or media that we had on the site, and writing was always something that it was my first love. But I'm an avid fan of many different golf podcasts. There's the 19th Hole Golf Show that Ryan Ballengee does. There's the No Laying Up podcast. Shane Bacon just came up with the Clubhouse, which is another great podcast. And and there's just so many great things. And I sat back and thought, much like I did when I started Chicago Duffer, the first iteration of Golf Unfiltered. Well, I can do this. And so I bought a pair of headphones and decided to really just talk about golf. I figured it was great to kind of get your voice out there, talk in a way that people don't necessarily hear all the time on the Golf Channel or other publications or networks, and just have a general real man discussion about the sport that we both love, or that we all love who listen to the show. And so over time, as we had more guests on, because it started off as just me talking into a microphone, which kind of got pretty boring. But then I had my first guest, which was Matt Castonguay, who we talked about a little while ago. The very next guest I had was Shane Ryan, who had just published his Slaying the Tiger book, which was a huge get for me. It's like, oh my God, my second guest is going to be Shane Ryan. And so there was just so much controversy going around that whole thing. And so from that time, for whatever reason, any guest that I've had on the show has had this I guess comfort level. I don't know what it is, but they really do open up about things that go on in their life for the most part. And perhaps they hear the word unfiltered and they think they could say whatever they want, which I love, of course. It's great for listeners as well. But, we had Sean McKeel not too long ago, a former major winner, who had many things happen in his life from a health perspective. And he really opened up about that situation, which occurred over a decade ago. And he said some things that even he admitted on the show that he's never said before. And so it's an interesting way that people open up to you when you give them that platform and say, look, there's going to be absolutely no judgment here. Say whatever you want. We don't censor anything. So if you're going to listen to this and you have kids in the room, be sure to keep them at bay. But, because we say some pretty heavy stuff. But in addition to, Sean McKeel, we've had David Ledbetter on. We've had numerous golf writers. We have had yourself on as well, and we've talked about your story. So we plan on having many guests on in the future. We've got a few lined up already. We've also interviewed a PR expert to kind of give some insight as to when something happens, when the crap hits the fan for one of these major athletes, how do their PR team, or how does their PR team react? And so we went and got somebody like that as well. And so to go back to the Twitter comments that we were talking about earlier, I get a lot of suggestions from people on Twitter as to who we should have on the show. And it's extremely helpful. What do you guys want to hear about? Well, what happens when, what are all the things that go into making the decisions to release a golf club, for example? So we've had some golf club brands on. So we kind of hit to all different areas of the game. And it's been an extremely valuable learning experience for myself. I've learned more about the game doing that than I ever had before. And I've played the game for over 20 years. Worked in the game for 10, and it's been a beneficial experience, and I hope that it continues for many more years to come.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Don't you ever put me in the same conversation as those guys, though. My goodness. I'm just a guy trying to grow the game one person at a time. You're talking about major winners and some of the best minds in instruction. And yeah, just don't put me in that group.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ricky, it's guys like you that want to grow the game that are the people that should be on these shows, and so keep doing what you're doing too.
Awesome. So you watched the Masters, I have to assume. I have to admit, I decided to watch the Masters only because it was pouring down rain here. I had a tee time that I had to cancel, and I'm still bitter about it. But I watched the final round of the Masters, and I may or may not have fallen asleep for holes 9, 10, and 11 of Jordan's demise. But having said the fact that I missed the bogey that led to, I don't even know how many strokes that took, react to the final round of the Masters. What was going through your head as you're literally watching the wheels fall off of this 22-year-old, and he's still a kid. What was going through your mind?
Well, let me paint the picture for you. So I was at my in-laws' house, and we had just done our traditional Masters lunch. We go and we buy all the ingredients to make pimento cheese sandwiches and the egg salad sandwiches, and so we're sitting there. I'm chugging down beers, so I'll admit it's a Sunday afternoon and I'm a little drunk. Now, when the back nine occurs, and let's be honest, up until that point, until about the 10th hole, when Spieth bogeyed number 10, the tournament was pretty much over. In my mind it was, at least. And I think it was in a lot of people's minds. So he bogeys 10, he bogeys 11, and I'm like, all right, well, something's going to happen here. I don't know what. And then everything happens on 12. And I remember sitting in my father-in-law's recliner and just screaming at the television, kind of like, no, he didn't. He did not just do that. I cannot believe that just happened. And of course, I'm like 5 deep at this point. And, it's just some other colorful language, came out. And, I had interviewed a guest on the podcast not too long ago. And I think, he put it best. And again, it's Mr. Castaway, who we keep referring to. He said that it was basically a life experience watching that. Because for a lot of people, a lot of golf fans, especially younger golf fans, I'm 33, but people younger than myself who haven't seen such a collapse in a sporting event before, this may have been the first time on such a grand scale. And it was just absolutely incredible. I hadn't seen anything like that probably since, I can't even think of when. And probably, I'm a New England Patriot fan. I don't know if you could tell by the shirt I'm wearing. Brady won, Goodell nothing. But probably, when the Patriots went 16-1, that was probably the biggest collapse that I can think of up until that point. And then Spieth happened. And what's funny about it is, automatically, as someone who watches golf history and who studies it and who writes about it in various ways, you immediately start thinking and comparing other tournaments and collapses that you've seen. And quite frankly, I don't think there is any comparison, because a lot of people automatically go to 1996 with Greg Norman, where he had I believe he had a 5-shot lead or 6-shot lead going into the final 18 holes. Spieth had a 5-shot lead going into the last 9 holes and blew it. I can't believe it. It's just a scale or a magnitude that's something you didn't think would happen. But when he dropped this tee shot in the drink, and then he took his drop, and I said this on the podcast too. I said, it's one of those things where you kind of think to yourself, it'd be really crazy if he put this one in the water too. And then he did it. And it's like, oh God, I couldn't believe it.
So 2 things happened when I was watching that. Whenever I saw him hit when he hit as soon as he hit the chip shot, I mean, he knew it was in the water. He turned around and he knew it was in the water. And as soon as I saw the ball go into the water, I perked up a little bit and I was like, I just saw one of the most historic shots in Masters history, because it will be. But at the same time, he's finished in the 3 Masters that he's played in, T2 victory, T2. So he's doing pretty good. And let's go back to the fact that I said he's 22 years old. So I feel like, he handled it well. I mean, there were a lot of memes that were popping up after the fact of him and looks that he had on his, that were just, the camera caught him at the right time or the wrong time. But it was interesting to have watched him do that, and to be able to have seen that live, and to know that might be the best thing that could have ever happened to him too. I mean, don't get excited that, you T2 win back to back, and it's going to be exciting to see how he bounces back. I mean, does a 22-year-old bounce back? I don't really know if that's the right verbiage for it, but we saw history, and I can imagine the things that you were yelling and screaming at that TV. And I had just woken up from a nap, so I was like, oh God, what's going on?
Oh, jeez.
So speaking of the podcast, you only get to pick one. Who has been your favorite guest to date?
Oh, man. Well, I'll tell you what. We've heard of the Secret Tour Pro on Twitter. I've been trying to get this guy, who I know who it is. I've been trying to get this guy on the show for the longest time. At the end of last year, he allowed me to speak to his assistant. And so,
It was him.
Well, it wasn't him. It was someone very close to him.
Oh.
And what was interesting, though, is that this person who I interviewed, who admittedly, I don't think he'd be too mad at me if I said this, runs the account at times. Because let's be honest, golf is going on and this person's tweeting sometimes, so someone's got to handle it. That continues to be the most listened to podcast that I've had, because there's just so much intrigue around that Twitter account. It's just this anonymous guy who, if people knew who it was, everyone knows who this person is. But they really offer a lot of great insight and, kind of behind the scenes. And it really, as we said earlier, it really plays into the whole unfilteredness of my website. And that was probably the most interesting in terms of, number of listeners and the amount of reaction that we got to it. Other than that, speaking to David Ledbetter was just so mind-blowing in terms of just his knowledge of the game. And I'm saying obvious things in regard to David, but just the fact that he would take time out of his day to talk to a guy like myself, who by no means is working for a major network anymore. He could have spoken to anybody and currently does, but he took a good 45 minutes out of his day to talk to me about the golf swing. Still kind of blows my mind.
That's really cool. So speaking of the golf swing, and not as much the swing as it is the irons, Bryson's irons, I mean, what the heck is going on there? I mean,
I'll tell you what, I tweeted this out not too long ago. I'm going to slap the first weekend golf that I see that has irons all the same length. Just stop it. Just don't do it, because this guy is a mad genius. I don't know what it is. He's got it figured out, though, and apparently it's working for him.
So I saw a lot of ads on your website, both Google ads that I know are coming from, because one of them was for a dance club that I've been doing a lot of research on because I'm going to Vegas soon. And then some of them were ads of brands like Loudmouth Golf that I know that you're affiliated with. What's it take to become an advertiser for you? And are you looking for new advertising? And kind of what's that process like for you as a blogger?
Well, absolutely. I'm always welcome and always interested to hear about any products that anyone has. We do a lot of equipment reviews on the site. I've had the opportunity to review many different products, not just golf clubs, but also there's a lot of training aids as well as services that people provide. So if anyone's ever interested, I have a contact form at the bottom of my website that you can go out and just fill out. It's a very simple template. Let me know what it is that you do, as well as what you offer or any service that you provide. And we're always welcome. We always welcome, I should say, advertising suggestions. As you've mentioned, I do have an affiliation with Loudmouth Golf. They're great people. I love their clothing, and people do as well. Obviously, they do very well for themselves. And so, yeah, I mean, we're always welcome. And if anybody, I'm not going to just limit it to golf. If anybody, for example, maybe a brewery out there wants to help out, I mean, I am all for that, because really, we want to talk more about just the golf lifestyle. And as someone who works in the golf industry and the type of work that you do, you also, I'm sure, would agree with, golf is a lifestyle. There's so much that goes behind it. There's just so many little intricacies that go on other than just hitting a ball in a hole. I've reviewed cigars, I've reviewed beer. It's the three, what was it? Graham McDowell, Keegan Bradley, and I forget the third. Freddie Jacobson. They came out with beer. I was able to review those as well. And so everything's welcome here at Golf Unfiltered.
It's funny that you got to review those because I did too. The beers didn't blow me away, and I don't think they were happy with my review. I was honest in my review. I told them what I thought, and I'm also a beer guy and a beer nerd, and I'm on a different. I don't want to say that I'm on a different level, but I'm pretty much a beer snob. That's the word I'm looking for. So
a connoisseur.
No, that's all right. I'm a snob. I'll admit it. But yeah, to your point though, I mean, I just joined a new gym this week, and the idea of the lifestyle experience. I mean, it's more expensive than the gym that I was at. But guess what? The things that they offer and provide are different, better, higher end, et cetera. You get what you pay for mentality. And, a cigar that's $3 versus a cigar that's $25, you are going to see a difference in the tobacco. You are going to see a difference in the experience, the flavors, the aftertaste. And that is a part of being a golfer, because what do golfers do? According to most people, golfers play golf, they drink beer, they smoke cigars, and that's what they do. Well, you being able to review a cigar is something that is exciting, that you're able to tie in more than just fairways and greens and putts and the equipment that's used to do that. And I applaud that effort. So keep doing that.
Appreciate that.
So you've written for a lot of different publications, not just your website. Where else could I find your work? Name a couple of the big boys that you've written for. And you've mentioned Back Nine, which Shane Bacon, I don't know if that's where you met Shane Bacon, but that's where I was initially connected to Shane and have watched him grow. You mentioned Ryan, who now currently writes for Yahoo. I know him through Shane, through Yahoo. So where are some of the places that you've written for over the years and where we can find your work?
I've written a lot of different places. I started off really at SB Nation. Fans of that great blogging network will probably still find a lot of the work that I did over there. I've also contributed to Yahoo a few times. A lot of my work has also been distributed to USA Today, to Fox Sports, as well as a few other places. Back Nine, as you mentioned, was probably where I did the lion's share of my work for at least a year and a half. And now I'm also helping out Ryan over at the Golf News Net. So my podcast can be downloaded from the Golf News Net radio network as well. I'm working on a few different pieces over there. Satire, actually. We're trying to go with the world's greatest golf blogger is the character. And so we try to have a little fun with that as well. So you could certainly find my work there also.
That's really cool. Well, I know Ryan is, he just had a baby, I believe, was it last week, I believe. So he probably got his hands full, but I'll make sure I give him a hard time and be like, hey, so I hope you watched because we talked about you for the majority of this hangout. Do you ever allow guest bloggers on Golf Unfiltered?
Absolutely. We actually have a blogger that just published a few things this week. Cody Thrasher, he's a up-and-coming golf blogger, really wants to get into the game of golf blogging, I should say. And what I found is that there's a lot of folks just like myself and you who have daily 9-to-5 jobs who really do this for more as a hobby. I don't get paid for anything that I do at Golf Unfiltered, just like you had mentioned. You don't get paid for anything you do with Wednesday Match Play. But absolutely, anyone who's ever interested, who wants a platform to publish a few things, I'm pretty open with whatever you want to try out as long as it's golf related. We've had a few folks try already, and I think we've had some pretty good feedback.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of the hashtag Wednesday Match Play, I totally forgot to mention that this is presented by Eat Sleep Golf, and he just made the comment that I don't get paid for this. So Eat Sleep Golf, I don't know if you need my address or if you need my PayPal information. We totally forgot to talk about that. I'm totally kidding. I love what Eat Sleep Golf is doing and the guests they've been able to provide in their relationship. And my character down there that looks pretty much exactly like me, which is almost creepy when he sent that. I was like, weird. I like it. It looks like me. So I appreciate everything that Eat Sleep Golf is doing and continues to do to help keep this growing. And to your point, it's not about the money. It's not about, and I wish I could go in at 9. It's more like 8 to 6. So if you can, help me figure out
7:30 for me.
Yeah. Get it. But it's about growing the game, and that's what you and I both are trying to do. And I hope that the passion that I know that you have for the game is apparent in even things like your conversation tonight. It is to me, and the content that you're writing, the podcast. I mean, I probably talked longer than I should have when I was on the podcast, but God, to your point, I'm just walking around. I was in my bedroom and I was walking around and I was talking and I was just excited to share my story with people that, that if anybody wants to listen, that if they did, that they enjoyed what they heard. And that's what it's about. So, we've been talking, speaking of talking, we've been talking for a little over half an hour, and the show's supposed to be a half an hour, and I don't have a timer, and I should maybe consider doing that in the future. But before I let you go, we have what's called the lightning round, and once upon a time I said it was just 9 fun, random, rapid-fire questions, and I need to rebrand that because I've asked about 11 in tonight's lightning round, but they still have to be fast, quick, hard-hitting. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Speed golf. I mean, I just saw somebody play a par 5 in 35 seconds. So I think that you can handle this in less than that. What is your all-time favorite golf course?
Cantini Golf in Wheaton, Illinois.
I've never heard of that. I want to go. Let's play. What golf ball do you play?
Oh man, I'm playing Bridgestone right now. you put me in a spot, man. Yeah, we get a lot of support from Bridgestone, and I play Bridgestone, guys.
Do you drink alcohol on the golf course? You were already talking about beer, and if you do, what is your drink of choice when the Bev cart comes around?
I do, and I typically try to go with a clear beer, maybe a Heineken or perhaps even a Dos Equis or something from south of the border.
Nice. What golf course have you not played that is at the top of your bucket list? And if you say Augusta National, I'm ending this podcast right now.
It will not be Augusta National. I'd really love someone to try to get me on Pinehurst. I've always wanted to play that course, and so if anyone knows anyone, give me a call.
We should talk. I don't know if I can guarantee it, but I have a couple people I can introduce you to. What is your current index?
Oh, man, 9.3.
That's pretty good. You got some game. I like that. Anybody that's single digit. Favorite LPGA Tour player? And I asked this question a few weeks ago, and Jordan Spieth was the answer. And I was like, nope, I think you missed the L there. LPGA Tour player.
Or they were being really smart. I would got to be Lydia Ko. What that girl's doing, she's by far the best player on the planet right now. And what that girl's doing is just amazing.
And she's like, what, 17? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. She's been alive for like 10 minutes, and she's got 11 wins. I just don't understand it.
So does Fowler win a major? And if he does, and I'm not sure I'm sold that he does, which one does he win?
I think he does, and I really see him winning a Masters at some point in his career, and I think it's going to be later in his career.
That's wise. I appreciate that. So I know Les Bailey, formerly of the Friday Foursome, he's kicking and screaming every time I ask this, but I'm gonna ask it until the day he retires. You can see him over my shoulder. Do you think Tiger breaks Jack's record? Why or why not? And if you say no, and that's all you have to say, this is over.
I do not believe he does. I think that he's an extremely broken man in many different ways. I just don't see it happening. There's just no drive anymore, and he's not as intimidating, which I think is the biggest factor in all of this. He can come back as healthy as he wants, but he's not an intimidating factor anymore because these kids aren't scared of nothing. Okay,
so let's, to your point, coming back healthy. If he comes back healthy and he can play for another 8 years healthy, the way he was healthy when he was dominant between the years that he won everything he played in, if he comes back like that, do you think he could at least sniff at it and scare it? Because he's got Augusta, he's got St. Andrews, places that he doesn't even have to hit driver at to be able to compete in. Could he find that little bit inside of himself to get 5 more majors?
No, and the reason being is he's basically playing against a bunch of mini versions of himself. These kids who have grown up and are playing the game right now, and they're still kids, as we said, even 22 years old. They're unbelievable, and he just simply can't catch up with them.
Okay, side question. Do you think the day that he wakes up and realizes that he can't, does he retire, just fade away? Because he's not going to be like an honorary starter at Augusta. He's not going to play on the Champions Tour. Like, he's not going to do that stuff. Do you think that he hangs it up and just disappears when he thinks he can't break it? Because he played for the longest time to break that record. That was why he played, was to break Jack's record.
That's a good question, and I think that he's not going to fade away as well or as on the stage as like a Kobe Bryant faded, for example, this year. But I see him breaking Sam Snead's record and then kind of transitioning, much like Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus did, into the golf course design.
Okay, I like that. And I do want to go play Blue Jack Nationals for a couple of reasons. One, because it's Tiger's course, and two, they don't have rough, and I like that they don't have rough because I don't necessarily hit it that straight always. And your final question of your hashtag Wednesday match play, we're like 10 minutes over time, and I don't even know what time your bedtime is, but I guarantee it's late where you are. What is next for Golf Unfiltered?
Well, we're trying to get a little bit more social. People who visit the site now will probably notice a few additions to the site, but we really want this to be a community, much like you've grown with the golf community over at Google+. And we want people talking with one another. We hope to have some great guests on the Golf Unfiltered podcast here coming up. And if anyone has any suggestions, or if there's anybody that you want to see appear or hear, I guess I should say appear on the podcast, let me know, let Ricky know, and we'll try to make it happen.
I love it, and you've always got my support. Anybody that I can help bring and introduce to you, I'd be more than happy to. And maybe we can figure out a way to get you on Pinehurst. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I know it's late. You're trying to do a podcast this evening, so I'm going to let you go. And quite frankly, the sun just went down, and I'm hungry. I haven't had dinner yet. But as always, on the hashtag Wednesday Match Plays, that you have to remember to eat, sleep, golf.